Good morning. Welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. And here we are on day 131, and I'm continuing the story of Donkey Skin. Now, remember, she had her new place to work and live in this royal country home of a king that was close by to where she'd grown up. And the king and the queen of this land had a son who was quite young. He was a young man. And he had been out riding through the countryside, just through all the beauty of nature. And as he was going about, he began to get a little bit hungry. And he knew that, this country home was, his family's, and the people that worked there worked for his family. And so he decided that he would stop in there and see if he could get some fresh bread and butter. And it was close to noontime. And so indeed, some fresh baked bread had just come out of the oven, and there was fresh butter that had been churned sometime not so long before then. And there were some light cheeses as well, and some things from the garden. And as he rode up and tied his horse up to the rail that was there and went in, the head mistress of the country home, of course, immediately began to get things in order and ready for him if he wanted anything. In he went. And she immediately set a table for him when he said that he was hungry. And there was tea and all those delicious things I just mentioned, as well as some very incredibly good pastries that had been made, by Donkey Skin. Now, he didn't know this, but of all the things that he had that morning, the pastries were by far the best. And he commented on that. He was a sweet young man. And when he was finished, he decided that he would just walk through the building. Now, it turned out that that was a day off for Donkey Skin, and she was in her room. She had, of course, locked the door, and she was putting on those dresses that she had made by the king who wanted to marry her. She was trying them on and looking at herself as best she could. And the young prince was now walking through this country home. And it was known just to be very beautiful. Had great woodworking that had been done on it, and stonework. The plastering the walls had been colored in such a way that when the light came in through the windows, it changed throughout the day, the color. So he was walking, admiring the craftsmanship of this country home. And he opened each room as he passed by and peeked in and looked out the view from the windows. And he gets to Donkey Skin's door and he tries the knob and it won't open. Donkey Skin knows that somebody's at her door. And she stops and becomes very quiet because all this time she has been incognito, not letting anyone know what she really looks like or who she really is. Now, that donkey skin, she wore it anytime she went out. She would, however, go down sometimes to the stream where she would take it off and bathe herself there in the cool water. And she'd done that morning before putting on her dresses. And she had on that dress that was so much, well, like the sun, brilliant with all the gems that would glitter and shine when the sun's rays hit it. And she'd put that on. And the prince, I'm not sure if he detected some sound inside or saw some light appearing in an unusual way from underneath the door. Or maybe it was just his curiosity to see what was behind the locked door. But he put his eye down to the keyhole, and in through the keyhole he could see Donkey Skin. Now, the princess, she was beautiful, and well, there was a way about her. And of course, back in those days, people fell in love very quickly, much more quickly than they do today. It was as if fate had somehow brought these two souls together. At least that's what it felt like to the prince. He peered in through that keyhole and he couldn't stop looking. Her long hair cascading down her back. She was holding completely still and peering at the door with a look of, well, curiosity and also a little bit of fear, because that experience with her stepfather had just left a mark on her that was very difficult to rid herself of. She thought about that and thought how close she had come to having had to marry a man that was so much older than her and she had no interest in other than as a father. So she was a little shy around allowing anyone to see her. Of course, this is why she wore the donkey skin. Well, the prince peered for quite some time. Donkey Skin, the princess, she just held still. Eventually, he stepped away from the door. But something had changed inside of him. He was of that age when young prince and the son of a king and queen, it was time that he started looking for a wife, and he had never met anyone that had caught his attention. It seemed all the young maidens that were considered appropriate for him to marry just didn't ever capture his attention in any way. So now he walks away feeling like, this woman, I can't get her out of my mind. I want to know more about her. Oh, his heart had just been completely taken. Well, he made his way home that afternoon. Luckily, the horse knew where to go because he was lost in thought. He was lost in this feeling of wanting to connect with someone that he found so lovely. His horse made his way back to the palace, and some of the stable men came out and helped the prince off and took care of his horse because he was as if in a daze. And he went to his room and lay down didn't even take any of his apparel off and just stared up at the ceiling as if in some kind of a trance. Well, eventually he was roused to come down for dinner, and he sat there again. He was kind of gone because he didn't know quite how to proceed with this whole thing that had overtaken him. Well, the conversation was lively at dinner, except he didn't participate in any of it. He hardly touched his food. He went back to his room, and his mother and father, of course, were very concerned as to what was going on with him. And they inquired of everyone, had anything happened, and no one could say. And well, this behavior settled deeply into the prince and went on for day after day. And he seemed actually to get worse. Hardly touched his food, kind of stayed to himself. And his mother, of course, went in one evening, sat down with him, and really asked him what had happened. And he, trusting her, was his mother, he shared what had taken place for him. His mother, of course, said she would do all she could to find out who this maiden was. And we'll leave the story there and find out what happens next. Thanks for joining.